When we can uncover what our true core needs are, we can finally start understanding the ways we've been getting in our own way and self-sabotaging. And we can finally have better, more effective, and more empowering ways of fulfilling our needs so that self-sabotage can turn into self-trust and self-empowerment. Hey there, I'm Antonie, and I empower female entrepreneurs and goal-oriented women to break free from the disempowering societal norms, keeping them stuck in self-sabotage, people-pleasing, and overworking themselves, so that they can pursue their passions with self-trust, meaning, and self-worth. So this video is going to be a little bit different because I want to walk you through a super powerful workshop session that I created based on a couple of pages out of a book called The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. And I'll add a link to the full book in the description box below. And this is a topic that I actually stumbled upon pretty recently, but that has just been so powerful to me. And I even walked my partner Lucas through it as well. And he loved it, and so I just knew that I needed to share this with y'all. And the funny thing is, it is actually what I said, so it's literally 2 or 3 pages out of the book that talks about the content that we're going to cover in this video. But I just felt like this content was just so valuable that I was like, this needs a workbook section to really dive deep into it. And so that's what I ended up creating for myself, and that I want to walk you through today as well. And with that in mind, I wanted to help you get the most out of this kind of workshop style video that we're going to do. So I've put together a super simple resource for you to use alongside the video, where you can follow along with the prompts that we're going to cover and take your own notes. So feel free to pause the video, grab the resource, and the link is in the description box, and then come back to it. And otherwise, you can of course just use your own notebook as well if you prefer that. But I really recommend that you actually work through the different questions and prompts that we're going to cover, because if you do and if you go deep into this, it can change your life. And it can make fulfilling your needs and your desires actually a lot simpler than what we think. So to begin with, let's just cover the theory and the foundation of the exercises that we're going to walk through today. So the first step is uncovering what core commitments are all about. And so in the book, the author describes core commitments as what you really want in life and what you want more than anything else. And so she describes it as your life objective or your life intention, and essentially what you're pursuing in your life. And the way that you can uncover what your core commitments are, and don't worry, we'll do all of this when we get to the actual workshop session, so I'll let you know. For right now, it's just theory and understanding what we're going to do. But the way that you learn what your core commitments really are is looking at 2 things. And so the first thing is things that you struggle with the most. And so essentially these are things that you want but for some reason struggle with. Maybe you struggle to hold on to them, or maybe you just struggle to actually attain it and get it into your life. And the second thing you look at to uncover what your core commitments are the things that you are most driven by. And so what you'll do when you find the things that you struggle with the most and the things that you are most driven by, you look at those and you essentially peel back the motivations for each of these. And by doing so, you essentially find the root causes. When you find the same or similar root cause for multiple things, you uncover a core commitment. And so don't worry, if some of this doesn't make sense, we will walk through the exercises, so it will all make more and more sense as we go. And the thing is, the core commitments isn't really what we want to uncover. It's the necessary step to get to where we want, but it's not really what we're searching for. Because pursuing those core commitments actually just keep us stuck in self-sabotaging behaviors. And that is because the core commitments only cover up what we really need to fulfill in our lives, which is our core needs. And so the core needs are essentially the opposite of your core commitments. And in the book, the author describes the core needs as essentially your life purpose or purposes, and what you really need to fulfill in order to stop self-sabotaging and uncover an empowering and fulfilled life. And it kind of sounds like magic, but it actually kind of works. And so you can kind of imagine it as in your life, imagine that you're driving on a road. And imagine that you always turn to the right. You just keep turning to the right. And essentially, this is your core commitments. You keep pursuing your core commitments, and you're just always going in that direction. But then imagine that what you really need to pursue and what will actually bring you fulfillment, what will actually bring into your life what you need most, is to the left. And so you keep turning to the right, but you actually need to turn to the left. And the cool thing about this as well is that you've been turning to the right for months, maybe even years of your life. And it could seem like you need to really turn to the left for a long time to kind of get back to where you need to be and to really feel fulfilled. But the cool thing is about these needs is that they are so ingrained in what we really need, and they are so true to you, that just turning to the left once, a few times, will already start fulfilling you on completely new levels. And so you don't need to turn as much because you're actually hitting the right target. Okay, so now we've covered the theory and the foundation of the exercises and the little workshop session that we're going to do. And so just before we really dive into the questions and the exercises, I want to advise you to make sure that you're going deep enough into each question to really uncover what's happening within you. So with each question that we go through, and maybe especially the first two, keep asking yourself, is there more? So with each thing you write down, before you just move on to the next thing, ask yourself, is there more? And then be open to there being more for you to write down. And only once you feel content, like, no, you know what? There isn't more. This is true. This is what it is. Then you move on to the next part. So this is the time to really dive into the questions and write down. So again, you can grab the free resource below and everything is set up for you to do it there, or you can just use your own journal or a notebook or anything. And so the first question you're going to ask yourself is, what do I struggle with most in my life? And again, feel free to pause the video and then just dive into it with each question. And just remember that while you go through it, once you write down, ask yourself, is there more, before you move on to the next thing. And also while you're writing down, try to get a little bit specific. So let's say you struggle with friendships. Instead of just writing down, oh, I struggle with friendships, meaning you just write down friendships. Try to ask yourself, okay, but what specifically in regards to friendships do I struggle with? Maybe it's meeting new people, or maybe it's keeping friendships long term, or maybe it's actually feeling authentic in my friendships. Or if you struggle with your health, don't just write health, but maybe it's continuing to eat vibrant and nutritious foods, or sticking with my workout routine. And so you can pause the video and write down the things that you struggle with most, and once you're ready, you can come back in. And then the second question that we're going to dive into is, what am I most driven by? And remember here as well, get specific and continue to ask yourself, is there more? And so to be specific, don't just write helping others, but ask yourself, who do you want to help? And with what? What outcomes would you like to see the people you help experience? So now that you've written down a list of the things that you struggle with most and the things that you are most driven by, now it's time to peel back the motivations for each of these things. And so you'll ask yourself, what are my motivations for each of the items that I listed? And another way to look at this is asking yourself, why do I want this? So like we mentioned earlier, maybe you struggle with friendships. Why do you want friendship? And make it specific to your struggle. And the same with, you want to help others. Okay, why do you want to help others? And again, keep it specific to your situation. And another way to look at it is, why is this important to you? Why is it important to you to help young children feel loved? Why is that important? When you're writing down your motivations, keep it raw and keep it simple. So let's say that one of the things you've written down is that you struggle to work out consistently. Instead of writing something along the lines of, oh, I want to work out consistently because I want to feel more energetic and confident, and I'd like to fit into my old jeans again. Instead, just put energy, confidence, lose weight. So just keep it simple and raw, and you don't have to make it fluffy and pretty. This isn't an essay that you're writing for your professor. This is just you uncovering, okay, my motivations for each of these: energy, confidence, passion, love, approval, acceptance, joy, freedom. belonging, love, being wanted, being valued, being appreciated, being seen, feeling heard, proving myself right, perfectionism, being liked, being accepted, feeling approved of, feeling validated, safety, security, connection, growth, making a difference, standing out. And so for each of your items on your lists, some of them may have 1 or 2 words to them, and some of them might have like 4 or 5 words. But the point is just for you to go through each item and just ask yourself, okay, motivation for this. Yep, this. Okay, next. And then you just go through each of the items on your lists. But again, keep it simple, keep it raw, and just go with your gut instinct on this one. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one's going to proofread it. No one's going to check it. It's just for you to start uncovering and unveiling what's going on here. And just so that you're already prepared for the next section, you will probably write a lot of the same things. And sometimes you might write like safety and security, and otherwise you might just write safety, 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 safety. So don't hold yourself back from the true motivation. You can have things that pop up repeatedly, and most likely there will be. So the next step, once you've written down your list of motivations for the things that you struggle with and the things that you're most driven by, is to take a look at your list of motivations. And then the question is, can you spot any patterns here? Are there any similarities that pop up repeatedly? And once you go through, you can just circle around the words that, okay, I've seen this multiple times, or I've seen a similarity of this, so I'm going to circle it. And then you just go through it and you circle around similar terms and words. And they don't all have to connect with each other. So you may have a group of words that resonate with each other and that are similar, and then you have another group of words that are quite similar as well. And just remember that they don't have to be exactly the same. So again, you can have safety and security. They're basically the same thing. Or you can have acceptance, love, being liked, feeling valued, approval, belonging. All of those things go in the same bucket. So in some cases, you might find some words that literally repeat themselves, and other times you'll find words that are similar and in the same bucket. Just start circling anything that feels like it's more than a one-off and feels like it's more present as a pattern. And you might find 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, maybe you'll find even more of similar motivations. This is your unique blueprint, so there is no right or wrong here. And so now the next step is to define your core commitments. And so look at the words that you circled and find the overarching theme. And then group it into 1, 2, or 3, or however many groupings that you find. And then take one grouping at a time and take a look over it and use that to define your core commitment. And essentially, when you write down your core commitment, it's the same thing. Keep it raw, keep it simple. It doesn't have to be an elaborate sentence. It can be a very simple statement. So for example, maybe the overarching theme and the pattern that you spotted is that you want to feel valued, you want to feel loved, and you want to feel seen for who you are. Well then bam, you've got one of your core commitments. And so maybe your core commitment is essentially that you want to feel in control. Maybe your core commitment is that you want to be loved by others or valued by others. Maybe your core commitment is that you want to feel safe and at ease or peaceful. And so go over each of the groupings that you found and define a core commitment for each of them. So once you've got all of your core commitments, it's time for the truly important and transformative part. So now that you've got your core commitments, can you see that these are the things that you've been striving for in your life? These are the things you wish for, aim for, try to reach, but then also kind of struggle to either attract or hold on to in your life? That is because you're focusing on the wrong thing. Because your core commitments only keep you chasing, wanting, and struggling. And again, like we mentioned earlier, it's like you're constantly driving to the right, but that's always keeping you away from driving to the left, where you really want to be. And so it's just keeping you chasing and going and hustling and grinding and wanting and struggling. Now your core needs, however, are much simpler to fulfill. They might not be easy to fulfill to begin with because it's probably going to be a really new experience for you. But they demand way less conditions to be met. And they also aren't dependent on other people, which means that you can fulfill your own needs. And they are what you really need to focus on in order to turn self-sabotage into self-trust and empowerment. So that means that it's time to define your core needs. And that is actually super simple. Because like we covered earlier, your core needs are basically just the opposite of your core commitments. So some examples that the author covered in the book include that if your core commitment is control, then your core need might be trust. If your core commitment is being loved by others, then your core need is self-love. And now sometimes your core need is not literally going to be the opposite of your core commitment. Because for example, if your core commitment is safety, it doesn't mean that your core need is to be unsafe. In these cases, you'll need to dive a little bit deeper and ask yourself, what is it that this core commitment gains me? If I fulfill the core commitment, what do I gain out of that? What need or desire does it fulfill for me? And I'll give you a personal example because that was actually one of my core commitments, to feel safe and to feel at ease and peaceful. And then again, I knew that my core need was probably not to feel unsafe and not at ease. But the thing is as well that safety is way more external. It's something that I need to be given by other people in order to feel safe. And so the question is, what do I actually gain by feeling safe? And what makes me feel unsafe and therefore keeps me wanting to feel safe? And so I found that in truth, it was this want to know or have some sort of guarantee that I wouldn't get hurt in a situation. So the real issue was a fear of getting hurt. But then again, we both know that there is no guarantee out there that you can go out and you will just never get hurt. And so I needed to ask myself, what would fulfill that need more? And so what I discovered was that it was trust. Trusting that, for one, not everyone I interact with is going to hurt me. But more importantly, it was to trust that even if I get hurt, I will be okay. And I know that because I've gotten hurt in the past, which kind of created that fear, and yet here I am. I'm still alive. I'm still okay. And so for me, when I trust and I focus on trust, I feel safe, knowing that even if this goes wrong, I will be okay. And that creates a true feeling of safety instead of that kind of weak, wobbly, kind of external sense of safety that I was chasing. Me trusting allows me to create that from within and creates a safe space from within. And so when you start looking at your core needs and you're kind of wanting to make sure that they really are the right ones for you and like, yes, this is really my core need, you can ask yourself, if you had or felt or experienced this core need of yours, would your core commitment that relates to that core need automatically be fulfilled or become unnecessary? So if your core commitment is control, but you simply trust, then your need and desperation for control goes away. Because when you're trusting, you don't need to control everything. Or if your core commitment is being loved by others or wanted by others, if you then simply choose to always love yourself deeply and without conditions, then your need for love is fulfilled because you're always loved. So it's kind of like you're walking around with an empty cup and suddenly you fill the cup and then you no longer need to fill the cup because the cup is full. And that is how you'll know that you've uncovered your core need. And once you turn your attention to this core need, so instead of desperately trying to control everything, you focus on trust and trusting that everything will be fine, even if it's not perfect or done exactly the way that you originally wanted it. You no longer need to sabotage, because self-sabotage, as the author essentially puts it, is only a method of trying to fulfill your deepest needs. And you can kind of think of this as, imagine you're in a relationship and you don't really feel like it's a good, healthy relationship, but you just keep striving for it. You keep sticking around and you keep kind of desperately wanting them to love you and to want you and to be around you. And you just kind of cling on to this relationship. If you had a deep sense of self-love and you knew that, hey, even if this person leaves me or doesn't want me or doesn't love me, I am still loved, I still feel valuable, I am still valued, then would you really bother holding on to that shitty relationship anymore? The problem is when we don't know what our deepest core needs are, we end up using unhealthy coping mechanisms in order to try to fulfill them. But again, we keep turning to the right when we really need to turn to the left. Now, I feel like there were a couple of extra steps that I really wanted to do after I had walked through all of this. And so I want to walk you through an extra couple of steps that you can take to really get the full benefit and value of this workshop session. And so the first thing I want to recommend that you do is take a look at your core commitments and then the corresponding core need, and see if you can spot any disempowering cycles or loops going on in your life, where you're essentially constantly going for a core commitment, but then you have a limiting belief that causes you to sabotage yourself, which then reaffirms your limiting belief, and from there holds on to a lack of the core commitment that you deeply have. And to do this, to see if you have any of those disempowering cycles going on, I recommend that you take a look at the things that you listed down and the things that you struggle with most, and see where this might be related to your core commitments and your core needs. So I want to try to give you an example. So imagine that you struggle with voicing your opinions with other people. And then you have a core commitment around being valued by others. And then you realize that your core need is to really just be valued by yourself and have that sense of self-worth. And so your need and what you've been walking around with is a need for self-worth and feeling like you value your opinions, but you've been going about it in trying to be valued by other people. But the problem is that you have a limiting belief, maybe stemming from childhood, that your opinions don't matter as much as the opinions of those around you. And so because of this limiting belief, you have been self-sabotaging, and you've potentially had a subconscious behavior going on where you hold yourself back from voicing your opinions. And so let's say you're in a work meeting and you could share your opinions about something, but then you hold yourself back and you choose not to, because you tell yourself, well, my opinions don't matter as much as those of the other people around here anyway. And you tell yourself that these people aren't going to value my opinions. And so you just don't bother sharing them in the first place. And now this meeting is wrapped up and everyone is content and happy, and you'll have a great strategy to move forward with. And that reaffirms your belief that your opinions aren't as valuable because the meeting went well and you didn't speak up. And so your opinions weren't that necessary. And then that fuels the lack for your core need. So you're lacking self-worth, instead of actually feeling fulfilled and feeling like your self-worth is being filled. And so then you try to fulfill your needs in a different way and you follow along with your core commitment. But then you have that limiting belief, and then that goes into the self-sabotaging behavior, and then that reaffirms the belief, and then you continue to have a lack of self-worth. And then that just goes on and on and on and on. And so if you find any of these limiting loops or cycles going on in your life, then know this. Now that you know your core need, you can start fulfilling that and take a shortcut out of that limiting spiral that you've been in. So for example, if we follow the previous example, by you valuing your own opinion and you simply valuing it enough to actually voice it, and that's all you need. Because then you cut out that subconscious behavior of squashing your own opinions before you've even raised them, which then doesn't reaffirm the limiting belief and doesn't continue that lack of the need that you had. Because remember, your core need is you valuing your opinion. So yeah, sometimes other people won't value it as much. Sometimes they won't take it. Sometimes they'll be like, cool, but that's not what we need right now. But that doesn't matter. Your core commitment might be other people valuing your opinion, but that's not going to get you what you want. What you really need is you valuing your opinion. And by you taking the action and changing your behavior by simply valuing your opinion enough to bring it up, to voice it, to share it, then bam, you're out of that limiting cycle. And now this brings me to the very last section of this little workshop session that we've had. So now that you know your core commitments, and you've uncovered the actual core need, and you may even have spotted some limiting belief cycles going on in your life that are keeping you away from your actual core needs, I feel like it's time to create some small but impactful ways of fulfilling your core needs, not your core commitments. So it's time to create a list for yourself. And you'll create one list for each of your core needs, where you'll answer, what are some small but impactful ways for me to fulfill this core need? And just keep in mind that writing this down now is a great way to get yourself started and to start thinking of your life in a very different way. And a way to actually start incorporating these new insights into your life so that it doesn't just become a theory that you're like, oh, cool, okay, but then you don't actually change anything in the way that you approach your life and that you actually start fulfilling your core needs. But just also remember that as you'll go, you'll find new and maybe better ways to start fulfilling those needs. So this is just a starter list. Some of them might work long term, some of them you might change out with something better. The point is just to get you started and just to find ways that you can change the behavior that you've been doing and actually start fulfilling your core needs as opposed to striving for your core commitments. And these can be simple and small actions or simple habits or even just affirmations and reminders. If you've downloaded the free resource, you'll see a list of suggestions, and then you'll also have another empty page to use for yourself. And so if you want to get some suggestions for what some simple and small but impactful ways to fulfill your core needs are, then check out the free resource below if you haven't already downloaded it. And with that, it is a wrap for this workshop session. Personally, I just found this to be such a valuable and important and helpful topic. And I was truly shocked that it didn't take up more space in that book. I kept looking like, is there a workbook section at some point like this? We have to dive deep into this. This has to be more. And so I just really wanted to dive deeper into it and really start dissecting it. And I really hope that it was valuable for you too. And if it was, I hope that you will click the like button as it really helps me out. And let me know what you think in the comments below. And let me know if you found some valuable insights and maybe even some limiting loops going on in your life. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on new videos. And in the meantime, I really recommend checking out these videos. Thank you so much for joining me for this session.